The FIFA World Cup, in its nearly 100-year-long history, has seen not just a number of memorable moments that have been replayed forever and ever by fans of the sport, but has also seen a number of records that have been broken or created through the course of every single tournament that has actually happened in, of course, the World Cup's history. Now, there are some records which have been made, then broken again. But what of those records which, truth be told, will never really be or can never really be broken again throughout history? Now, obviously, we have to attach the caveat here and say that, look, you should never really say never, but you can actually almost this definitely say never about the breaking of some of these records. So hello everyone, welcome to Back to Sports Today. My name is Shane Reyes and today we are going to talk about 5 World Cup records, or 5 FIFA World Cup records which may never really be broken. Now at number 5, and this list is going to see a fair bit of the individual I'm about to discuss. Number 5, we have this man, Pele. The man who was born Edson Arantes do Nascimento and would forever achieve worldwide fame as Pele, the first true global superstar of the game, became the first global superstar of the game for good reason. He made his debut in the World Cup as a 17-year-old and actually scored a goal, and that is a record that has stood the test of time since 1958. No one else has actually broken that record, and truth be told, given the amount of talent that is prevalent in the world of football today and how keen managers and in fact coaches at all levels are to let players bed in more easily, it's pretty unlikely that you will ever see anyone break the record of when a 17-year-old Pele strutted onto the world stage, scored a number of goals, and arguably led Brazil to their first World Cup title. Of course, he would lead them to several other World Cup titles, which is where we come to unbreakable record number 4. Pele has lifted the World Cup not once, not twice, but 3 times. In fact, he is still the only player in history to have won the World Cup 3 times. And while there are a number of players who have won it twice, of course, you'd say there are a lot of Brazilians from the 58, 62, 70 time who were, of course, given 2 World Cup winners medals, or even the players who won it in 94, 2002, again for Brazil. You don't see too many who have won it thrice. In fact, there's only one man in the history of the World Cup who's won it thrice, and that is, of course, Pele. So if you ever want to use World Cups as your metric for determining the greatest of all time in terms of players, then it's Pele and absolutely no one else, because quite frankly, no one comes close to matching his levels. Because again, not only did he win 3 World Cups, he also played 4 World Cups, and it's worth noting that by the time he pretty much called it a day from international football after the 1970 World Cup, he was only 29 years old. So in theory, he could have actually played another World Cup in the coming year and maybe another one thereafter if fitness and of course team combinations so permitted. That's how young he started in his career, and that's why in many ways it seems pretty much impossible to actually see anyone break this record, mostly because if you have to look at it, since 1962 not a single team has actually gone on to retain the World Cup. So it's quite amazing if you have a player win 2 World Cups, never mind 3. Now, moving on to other records that aren't necessarily related to Pele, and at number 3 we have, and this is just a representational image of course in olden days when the matches used to happen. We're talking about the least attended game in FIFA World Cup history, or the smallest attendance. Now, the smallest attendance for a FIFA World Cup game came in the first ever edition of the tournament when only 300 fans turned up to watch a match. Now, 300 fans is a record for, and as I said, there's a reason this record will never be broken, is because unlike in 1930, in 2022, the clamor to watch a FIFA World Cup is just too much. It is not possible that a game will see just 300 paying spectators at the stadium. Today's day and age, you have stadiums that will be housing peoples in the tens of thousands. So a 30,000 or 40,000 seater stadium is considered a small stadium, and even those will often be sold out. So it's very possible that you're never going to see a football World Cup match being played with less than 300 people. I mean, it may just have happened if there was a World Cup happening during the peak of COVID and you had to be playing it in an empty stadium, only then. Otherwise though, as things stand, this seems like a record that really isn't going to be touched. Speaking of other records of attendance that may not be touched, the 1950 World Cup final, or I should say final in quotes, because it wasn't actually a final knockout. It was just the last match of the group stage that determined who won the World Cup. 1950 saw over 200,000 people pack the Maracana in the hopes that Brazil would be lifting their first ever crown. It didn't happen, of course, but the simple fact is that attendance record as far as World Cup games are concerned still stands. And don't forget that officially the number of tickets that were allocated for this match was about 176,000 people. But despite that, the number of people who managed to cram themselves into the stadium was over 200,000. And truth be told, given the focus on spectator safety and ensuring that there's no collapses of the stands or anything of that sort, seems pretty unlikely unless someone builds an absolutely gargantuan stadium that we're going to be seeing this record broken. Doubtless, of course, now you're wondering, if this is number 2, then what exactly is number 1 in terms of the records that may never be broken? Once again, we go back to 1958, which is the year Pele made his debut, but it's not really about Pele. No, it's about this man, Just Fontaine, the man who in the 1958 World Cup scored 13 goals in one edition of the tournament. You heard that right, 13 goals in just one edition. If you want some context, the record for the most number of goals ever scored in World Cup history belongs to, of course, Germany's Miroslav Klose. And he, throughout his entire World Cup career, scored 16 goals, and that came in 3 or 4 World Cups. He scored 13 goals in just one single edition of the tournament. In fact, you could argue that if it wasn't for Pele winning the World Cup as a 17-year-old, 1958 would in fact be the year of Fontaine. But it's just so unfortunate that it gets overshadowed because, again, it's a record that has stood the test of time for more than half a century. And truth be told, considering how team-based football is now, and that you don't rely on just a pure goal poacher, the type of striker that Fontaine was, it seems very, very unlikely that you're going to see any player actually breach this mark and get 13 or more goals in just one single edition of the tournament. And that's our list. Know of any other records which you think will not be broken? Do let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and tap that bell icon so you know when we're going live or uploading a new video for you guys. Then you can go ahead and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And last but not least, download the AajTak app for more such stories where you can read them, of course, in article form. Thank you all once again for joining us. I hope to see you with us through the day, but for now, goodbye.